Right, good morning everyone. How are we all doing? Everyone doing good? Oh, it feels nice to talk. There's nothing worse than just sitting there, or standing here I should say, just with a load of people in silence. I feel like I don't know what to do with my hands, where to look, all that kind of stuff. But no, thank you very much for coming on today. 11:30, so I imagine everyone's kind of getting to the point where we're thinking about lunch. Random fact, but statistically, you'd be most likely to get a harsh sentence if you're ever in court at this time. It's to do with the judges, I think, fancying a little bit of lunch themselves. But if we could stick with it, that will all be good. So my name's Josh Willows. I'm head of corporate sales at BroadBean. So don't worry, this isn't going to be necessarily a demo of BroadBean's technology, but it's going to be talking about some of the themes that we work with our clients on. And really, it's here to talk to you about the power of brand ambassadorship, social advocacy, why I think that's important in recruitment today, and hopefully give you some really kind of actionable takeaways for you to go and speak back to your business about. So, first and foremost, I promise this isn't a trick question. Does anybody know how much that's worth? Come on, guys, look, this isn't going to be a trick or anything like that. I could say something like, how much is it going to be worth post-Brexit? That's about $1? I don't know. But no, does everyone generally feel like they know what that is and how it works? Cool. So just as a little icebreaker, and so I don't have to continue talking the whole time, I'm just going to show you a little video as well on this.
Yo, what happens when I go out in my native East London and try and give out some good money? Try and give out £5 and then I try and give out £10. Check it out, let's see what happens. And I want to talk to you at the end about the meaning of rejection. Do you want £5? Are you sure? Yeah. Do you want £5? Sure. Do you want £5? £5? It's good money. Do you want £5? Five. Do you guys want £5? No? £5? Do you want £5? Are you sure? Excuse me. Do you want £5? Do you want it? You can have it.
Okay, so that video actually goes on for 8 minutes. I'm not going to play the whole thing. He goes up to £10. He keeps trying to go. So a couple of things. First of all, I was pretty annoyed when I first saw this because I used to live near Stratford and I spent my whole time trying not to be mugged. Turns out if I just walked around with my wallet held out, no one would have actually took it from me. But the point that we're trying to do that is we take something really, really simple that we all know the value of in terms of money. It's quite an objective thing. However, if there's no trust there, it's worthless. So I don't know if it was just the fact that he's kind of dressed as a hipster, but there's a few different reasons, but people just don't expect that on the street. So one of the things we're going to talk about, first of all, with social advocacy is trust. How can we not only trust our employees, but help our employees to build trust out to the candidates that we're looking to hire? So that's the first point. Second example, which is on the other end of the spectrum, is anyone familiar with this brand at all? Ever heard of them? Cool. So Supreme itself, it started in 1994. I was looking at some points of reference for 1994. So Wet, Wet, Wet were pretty big at the time. And it was when the Channel Tunnel opened. So just cast your mind back to them, right? But Supreme, what they've done fantastically well, so they kind of started as a skate brand, and if you ever see them around today, people go crazy for the products that they sell, right? There'll be people camping out, and what they've done really well is they've done two things. They've got people that we all want to be like to model their clothing, so it's got that perception of being cool, and they limit everything that they sell, so it always goes out of stock. Now, on the other side of the spectrum, then, as to what we were talking about at the beginning, they get away with some of these crazy prices. My favorite is the brick, resale for $110, right? So those are just two examples from one end of the spectrum of taking something that's objectively got a value and not being able to give it away literally for free, and on the other side, selling a brick for $110 just because it's got the Supreme logo. But before we go into that, and you're going to see, so again, I'm going to go back to kind of some of these elements of trust, and the real theme is take anything, so your employer branding, your recruitment scheme, whatever it might be, perception is often reality in these things, and it's how much the candidates put weight onto that that can really make a big difference on the quality of applications and the number of people that are coming through. But in kind of pessimistic fashion, let's just start with the challenges, because why is it that businesses aren't always doing this? So I'm going to go back to that element of trust again, but talk about it from the other angle, right? So for a lot of businesses, it's very, very scary to trust their employees, right? So we did a study on this. We interviewed 155 different HR directors to ask them about their social media policy. So when I first looked at this, it didn't look too bad to me until I really started to actually look at the numbers. So looking here, so we've got only a third actively encourage their staff to post on social media. So around another third allow it, but they'll monitor it. And then the rest will prohibit or actively discourage their staff from talking about them online, okay? So this is, I think, a confusing thing for me anyway in today's day and age. So have you ever heard the saying, so employer branding is what your employees are saying about you when you're not in the room, right? So whether you're navigating that conversation or whether you are controlling that conversation, it's still a conversation that is happening, right? But not only that, think about yourself as a consumer, and these are all the things that we want to know before we go into different areas, right? So whether it's booking a hotel, going to your favorite restaurant, whether it's buying a product online, we want to understand what the average person has to say about products, hotels, all of those different things. And jobs aren't necessarily any different to that whatsoever. So I'm going to give you some nice statistics on that as well. So I'll get them up nice and big on the screen so you can take pictures and go back and show them to your company about some actual facts underlining that. But just think about how you want to buy things and how you want to interact with companies and apply that back to the workplace. So the next kind of thing that I wanted to think about was, so what kind of content do people want? Because really the majority of the content that I actually see that employees are there, or is out there, sorry, in the marketplace, is actually more around almost trying to, I think probably the way I'd explain it is trying to make themselves look credible. So maybe if they're trying to sell something, trying to put something towards that product, or trying to underline their kind of professionalism as a business. So I ran my own kind of social experiment on LinkedIn, because I think that's the one that most of us use in the recruitment space. So I spent a lot of time kind of trawling the internet, trying to find content for the people like we've got in the room today, finding different case studies on social advocacy, and kind of putting them out onto my LinkedIn page just to see what I got back. As you can see, didn't get too much. I got the odd like here and there. Most of them I think are just my friends from school, like stuff like that. Don't really understand what I do. But I managed to get some little bits and pieces come through. So that was for about a few months, like 3-4 months I tried doing that. And then in the second half of the year, I thought I'd switch it up and just try a different kind of angle, which was kind of more about what's BroadBean like to work for as a business, what's our culture like, okay? So it is more serious than me just wearing comedy glasses every single day to work. But I think, interestingly, and it depends what kind of angle you're going for. So if you're going from a recruitment angle, I actually get people, it's weird, people think my life's like an episode of Mad Men or something. They see the pictures of doing presentations or anything like that. They don't see so much of the bad stuff, right? But it gives this real impression, and people have asked me about what's the company like to work for, and you look like a really, really cool business. The second thing as well is when I shifted that around, so just these bits here that I've got up on the screen got around 120,000 impressions, which depends how you want to see that. But the one thing I looked at and thought was, the next time I speak to people, they're going to know a little bit about me and who I am, and it makes you that much more memorable. And again, if we convey that and put that in the same place as an employer and what we're trying to do to candidates, it's all about being that kind of person that jumps to mind when they're looking for the job. Just as a bit of fun, and I forgot the sounds on this, so apologies for that. I thought I'd just show you, this was one of my most engaged bits of content last year, which is the BroadBean Christmas desk party.
Oh, mate.
So to say how seriously we actually take that, I'm still fuming. We finished second. But again, that post alone got just over 9,000 views. That was when I actually took it and took the screenshot of it, which was towards the end of the year. So it just gives you that example about the kind of reach you can have. I probably have a lot less connections, actually, than a lot of people in this room, as I've never been a recruiter personally myself. But as you can say, think about all of you and all the people that are out there. So I built those, and a lot of the kind of ideas behind that. There's 2 books that I read that I thought were just brilliant. They're brilliant books. It doesn't really matter actually about recruitment or anything like that, just if you work in business. 2 great books. You'll notice they're by the same author, so I do read other authors as well, just to say. But both of them talk about, and they're quite linked together. So Power Moments, probably the best example I can think about to give you with that, is, have you ever been to a theme park? Has everyone in this room been to a theme park at some point? Okay. So when you think about a theme park, what springs to mind, first of all? You think about the first time you rode Space Mountain or Oblivion or whatever it might be. Those are the things that jump into your mind. When you actually think about it, 90% of the time you're in a theme park is terrible, right? There's kids with too much sugar, people, you're queuing for hours. So we don't think about those, we think about the moments. And that's what you get with the flexibility. When you get your employees and you start to give them trust, what they start to do is be able to generate this, particularly if you let them express themselves and come out with some more of this creative content. So that's the first thing. The second book, Made to Stick, it's about ideas. Why do ideas stick? And the most predominant theme that comes up a lot throughout it is we tend to learn and remember things in stories. Now, when you look at a lot of the content that's out there at the moment, if we take this into kind of like an employer branding mechanism, a lot of companies do this really well from a company perspective. They generate the content, so on and so forth. But think about all the presentations perhaps you've seen, lots of different bits and pieces that you've seen over your life, and think about how you remember the general day-to-day stories. And again, that's what your employees have. They're the people that are experiencing. So sometimes one of the most powerful things you can do for your brand is just ask your employees what you're like to work for as a company and see what they come back with. And this is the thing that companies seem to be scared to do, but can also deliver the best results. So I promised I was going to underline that. And in the Made to Stick book, the other thing they said was people remember stats in the right context. Let's hope this works. Okay, so here's just a couple here, right? So none of these should be kind of real news to you when you really think about it. A lot of it's quite intuitive, right? But 84% of consumers value recommendations from friends and family. So again, imagine you could see an advertising for a job, but if your friend from school says to you, oh, I've been working in this business for 10 years, I think it's a great company, does anyone want to come work? Think how much more you think about that, or maybe someone you worked with in the past. We tend to trust our friends and the people we know far more when we trust brands. Content shared by employees receives 8 times more engagement than brand channels. So again, just the fact that the employees are willing to put themselves out there to share that content, it generates so much more than companies, because we always see companies as advertising and seeing some sort of personal gain from their element. Messages shared by employees went 561% further than the same message shared on their own brand channel. So again, even if you, at the very least, take away from this today, just get your employees to do the odd retweet or do the odd share on their LinkedIn page, whatever it might be. That could really help to boost your message 5 times more than you're doing today, right? 79% of firms reported more online visibility while implementing a formal employee advocacy platform. So again, bigger brand recognition, all things that a lot of businesses today are looking to drive, right? And then this one again from LinkedIn, which we all use day in, day out, even they have said that the employee shares have doubled that of the click-through rate of corporate shares. And again, think about how many businesses out there have this LinkedIn strategy in place, but don't have an employee sharing strategy as well. So, the next part to talk about is how to take action. So what I want to do actually is then kind of relate this back in. So a lot of you might be thinking, okay, this is great for just growing our brand messaging, all this kind of stuff. how can I actually relate this day-to-day back to recruitment? And probably the easiest vehicle I can think for that in a company is using your employees and trying to track that back as generating referrals. Now, the thing with referrals is whenever I think about it, it's really the oldest trick in the recruitment game, right? So probably there was a caveman he was living in the valley and he needed to get a new hunter-gatherer. So he asked someone if he knew anyone in the next valley and they came and joined that clan. Like, it's such a simple concept, but we've still kind of clung to that in a lot of ways. So we always see referrals just, oh, I've worked with this person for 5 years, so I can say they're really, really good. Please hire them and pay me a bonus fee. I'm not necessarily saying that we need to take that away, but I think it's looking a bit too small in terms of the overall picture. And I think an easier way to look at it is to start treating your employees the same way that you would an advertising channel, right? That's why I've just been kind of going through all of these facts and growing the messaging and all this kind of stuff. So this is just a really, really simple diagram. So if we take the general people outside recruitment, I should say, so the average person has around about 400 social and professional connections, right? So if you take your business, times it by 400, so your overall headcount, times it by 400, that is the current reach you already have. It's not something that you have to go out and manufacture. So your employees have already done the hard work in building all of those networks independently. So the question is then, how are you actually going to be able to leverage them? Now, again, tying back to this referral, we probably have to really change the way that not only do we speak to our employees, but also the ways that we reward them. So as a kind of show of hands in here, how many people in the room pay a referral fee for a hire? Excellent. Okay. So how many of you, so put your hands up again, if you pay anything out before a hire is even made? Yes, like that. All right, cool. So this is where I want to kind of try and change the way that we're looking at things, right? So here's an example, and this is just how one of the clients we work with choose to kind of articulate is back to the people in their business, right? Now, what you've got to think is there's two different ways that people can influence hires into your business. So the same way that we talked about at the beginning of knowing someone and just asking them to recommend it, or very simply, they can start building the funnel for you by sharing content, by sharing jobs out into the marketplace. And if you treat that as a funnel, if they're sharing just a story, it doesn't even have to be a job. If they're just sharing something about their day-to-day life, that is helping to bring people back to your brand. If they're actually getting applications and hires, then obviously by all means try and weight it in that way. Now, the way that we've then gone to do that is more kind of an instant gratification element. So I always get different kind of, every business that I've ever worked with on this has been very, very different. So different things work for different companies, right? So if you have the budget and you have the foresight to be able to do it, going out and doing things like simple things like Amazon vouchers, Starbucks vouchers, things that we use day to day, we're very, very familiar with. And all you need to say is, if 1 point equals 1p, then 1,000 points is a £10 Amazon voucher. But the point is you let the employees choose how they want to be able to spend that. Company gifts, we've had anything from get the parking spot for a month, an extra hour's lunch, a duvet day. That kind of gives a lot of businesses, sometimes you don't have huge amounts of budget, a good way to just be creative with how they do it. There's so many great examples. So if you take something like Twitter, has a really high-performing employee referral scheme. All they do is give a little Twitter flag that you stick to your desk that everyone in the business knows means you've referred someone into the company. So even just like that internal badge of honor is a really, really strong motivator. And then my favorite as well, so charities. So a lot of businesses are affiliated to charities, and it's a great way to kind of kill two birds with one stone in generating more excitement in the business around your referral and advocacy schemes, but equally as well, benefiting with charities that you're affiliated with and helping on a corporate responsibility. Final one I'll mention, which is a little bit different, is again, when companies kind of struggle in this first thing, I appreciate that it's really easy for me to stand here and say to you, well, you should be doing this, but how do you ever kind of figure out a budget for something that's never existed in a company? So we've been doing a lot recently with companies of the beginning period. The most important thing is just to be able to track that activity. And then we'll maybe run competitions. And that competition could be anything as simple as the most points wins in a month, or it could be just by getting an application or just by sharing, you go into a raffle prize and you can win that. And again, what's really great about it is the businesses that we work with who do it well then announce that out to the company, get all the photos, then they've got more content, and it becomes kind of a self-perpetuating cycle, right? And that's one of the things I would say as well. Sometimes I think we really try to overcomplicate some of this stuff, and we get too dragged down in different areas. So one thing is try and keep it as simple as possible. Try and think about how you're going to work with your employees, right? Most of us today use social on our mobile phones far more than we do on our desktop. So how can we make the messaging and the way that we're working with the employees easy to share on their mobile phones? Can we get them sharing on WhatsApp? Can we get them sharing via SMS, if anyone still uses that? I'm not sure if they do, right? But all these different areas. And then I wanted to give you some more stats just to go through. So you may or may not have seen this. They've won quite a lot of awards. There's a business we work with called Asurim. They're a call centre up in the northwest of the UK, so we've done a big project with Cree Communications, who are here today as well, who handled all their employer branding. But in the first year that we rolled it out, we saw some really encouraging statistics. I mean, even things like the 97 hires, I know that's what everyone gets really excited about, but if we think about the 246,000 clicks that we have, and the amount of messaging that they were able to get out into the marketplace, it was something that we were really proud to work on, and I think is just a great example of how you can do it really well. So happy to go into that in more detail kind of after this. I don't want to talk about it for too long, but that's just an example of what you can do if you get these kind of schemes really put together. So the things that I really wanted you to take away from today, and there's really just 3 points. First of all, give your employees a voice. The second is trust their message. I think actually that's probably the biggest one. I think just putting some trust back into people. Think about how we are on social. We want everyone to think that we're doing really well. So there's so much more opportunity for positive reinforcement than there is negative, and keep it simple. So, as I said at the beginning, my name's Josh. I'm here for BroadBean Technology. It's probably about an acceptable time now. We have a cocktail bar on our stand if anyone wants to come over and have an espresso martini or a gin. And a conversation's free, so please feel free to come up and take it from there. Thanks very much for your time, everyone. Cheers.